it going? I wanted to talk to you about our lens for the week, the post-colonial lens. This is actually our the last lens that we're going to cover as a class. Moving forward, you get the option to decide what you want to focus on, especially for essay. It's up to you to decide what your lens will be for the essay. So the post-colonial lens is really looking at power dynamics as it relates to historical context, specifically related to colonization. Right? So basically, post-colonial theory assumes that there's lingering or ongoing remnants of colonization when Western countries, Western powers, had colonized foreign countries, meaning that, all right, we talk about the 13 colonies in America, right? England had colonized the United States before it was the United States, and they were colonies. Colonization continued well into the 60s and even continues today in various formats. And so it's not something that is necessarily like done with. And basically what this lens asks us to do is to look at the way that Western powers have influenced dynamics in other cultures and countries, and explore that within the text. So, for example, in our novel, Nadia and Saeed travel to London. England was a huge colonial power and still has colonies now. And so this dynamic between Saeed and Nadia moving to the former colonizers' country, we can look at how the power dynamics are at play there in that experience with them. And so basically, post-colonial lens looks at the historical way that Western powers oppressed other cultures and countries and peoples, and then explores that within the text. I think the guiding questions at the bottom of the page here are really helpful and can help us with our exploration of the novel. So, for example, how does the literary text explicitly or allegorically represent various aspects of colonial oppression? So basically, how do we see colonial oppression continuing in our text, either explicitly or allegorically? And we see colonial oppression in our text as we see Londoners fighting back against these countries that were previously colonized by London, right? And so there's all these refugees coming to London, but the Londoners don't want them there, even though the Londoners, or the British, created problems within these countries through their colonial influence. The other question I thought was really important was, what does the text reveal about the operations of cultural difference, the ways in which race, religion, class, gender, sexual orientation, cultural beliefs, and customs combine to form individual identity? In this text, we see a lot of discussion of the Nigerians versus the people of Nadia and Saeed. We technically don't know where they're from, so we don't know what their group is, but we see this like dynamic within Saeed, who's very fearful of the Nigerians, and he wants to stick with his own kind, and so we see this like ongoing experience of cultural difference between cultures that were formerly oppressed, and then they're also united within this larger issue, or this larger circumstance where there's the British and the Londoners who are also fighting back against the refugees. So there's multiple dynamics here in which there's various cultures and they have various interactions with each other. And that's all taking place with the backdrop that Britain used to be the colonizers of these places. And so the post-colonial lens is really looking at how power dynamics within Western culture continues to be an influence in our society today, and how it continues to influence various groups of people, and then using that to look at the text specifically. Okay, so I know that's all very, very complicated, but really it's just how do Western countries continue to have an influence on people, knowing that there's this history of colonization in our world. So the next page is a super brief overview of the way that Western powers colonized the Middle East. And so it gives a little bit of context for understanding the way that, like historically, what was going on. And so hopefully give you a little bit of context if you're not familiar with the role of colonization in the Middle East. And then your assignment this week is really just to start answering some of these questions based off the novel, exploring the relationship between different cultures within the novel and within the role of the Western powers within the novel as well. Okay, as always, feel free to ask questions, send me an email, we can set up office hour appointment, let me know how you're doing with everything. Okay, all the best.